So I grew up in the 80s watching movies like Revenge of the Nerds where fraternities and sororities were like the essence of college. And my high school experience was very different. I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and we had our share of, antics and shenanigans, but we never once stole a goat. And I just always felt like that was missing. And even when we did act up, there was sort of like a nerdy undertone. Like we would pick on people by calling them literary characters. So if somebody didn't want to do something fun, we would be like, whatever, Bartleby. And I just never wanted to be Bartleby. That was the worst thing in the world. So after I graduated, I went off to college and I went to a really big state school, and it was very Greek. And I thought, this is my chance. I'm gonna rush. And so I went to Rush, and I just remember being completely blown away. There was this row of houses, and in front of each house there were these sorority girls, and they were like singing and chanting their little sorority songs, and it was mesmerizing. And I assumed they were doing it, with some measure of irony, but they were not. And so I got a bid, and I decided to pledge. And at first it was really fun. It was like boys and parties and drinking. But then when we got into the sorority part, it was like candles and like singing and a shocking amount of puffy paint. Like they put puffy paint on everything. It was amazing. And they had all these rules and traditions. Like they had this thing called the sunshine plaque, and that was what they gave somebody if they were having a hard time. So they'd be like, hey, we heard your grandfather died. We want to give you this piece of wood that has a sun painted on it, and you get to keep it for a week. And that was the way they supported each other. And then they had this thing called dittoing, and this was the gesture of dittoing. And the idea was it was a way during meetings to show agreement or support without making noise and disrupting the speaker. And I just remember wondering, how fervently are these people agreeing with one another that they have to have this kind of policy? Like, what was the incident where they said, we need to put some rules around this, what set it off? And dittoing could be done a lot of different ways. Like you could sort of be chill about it, or you could be really excited about it. You could kind of make it your own. But the important thing about dittoing is it was what we did. It was like a way to affiliate with the group. And there was another sorority on campus, and their thing was snapping. And so you'd be on campus, and all of a sudden they would just erupt in these snapping fits, if they were West Side Story. And I just remember being like, does anybody else think this is dumb? And I would just sort of look around, and it was like, nope. But it was not all fun and games. There were some very serious issues facing the sorority. For example, sometimes people would find out what our secret letters meant and our secret symbols, and everyone would get very upset. And in those moments, I would also appear to be very upset. And they were very concerned about apathy, sorority apathy. People were coming to the events and they weren't showing enough enthusiasm. But the greatest issue of our time really was that every once in a while someone would publish an op-ed in the school newspaper criticizing fraternities and sororities. And everyone would feel just so persecuted by that. And they actually refer to it as Greek bashing, which I think to this day is the only issue less concerning than the war on Christmas. But there are actually some really great girls in the sorority who were fun and interesting and normal, but it was you couldn't really connect in that environment because there was this other contingent of classic sorority girls, and they just made it, this scene. And context is everything, if you invited me to a bridal shower and you said, Elizabeth Warren is going to be there and Toni Morrison, I would still be like, ugh, are we going to have to play games, And so, I really wanted to connect with these girls, but I just couldn't, and I was too young to understand that sometimes you just can't. And I tried so hard. And they were really glamorous, and they loved to talk about hair and makeup and clothes.